than 13 meters. But back to why we're here. We need to get a better handle on the bathymetry below the ice shelf. Basically, the shape of the ocean floor below this floating ice tongue. The shape will help us calculate the circulation of the warm water, well, comparatively warm water, that's eating away at the ice shelf from below.
For most of human history, the south end of the world was a blank white page, a rumor of a frozen continent, then a wall of ice that ended ships and ended stories. Even after explorers finally stood on it, the continent kept its secret concealed beneath the most massive object of ice on Earth. A frozen shield up to 4.8 kilometers thick, heavier than most mountains, moving with the slow, crushing patience of a geological force. But the shield is failing. Satellites measuring the planet's gravity field have watched Antarctica shed ice at an average rate of roughly 135 to 150 billion metric tons per year over the last 2 decades. Enough frozen water, each year, to raise global sea level by about 0.4 of a millimeter. Year after year after year. And as the ice thins, retreats, and cracks open, something is being exposed. Not a secret base, not a pyramid, but something stranger, and in its own way more unsettling than either. Beneath the ice, radar has now revealed a landscape that should not look the way it does. A region of ancient river valleys and ridges, roughly the size of the state of Maryland, has been found frozen in time under the East Antarctic ice sheet. A remnant of a world that existed before the continent ever froze, preserved for at least 14 million years despite the weight of miles of moving ice above it. Scientists call the preservation unusual. The motion of the ice sheet should have ground it away. It didn't. And beneath the ice there is also water. Hundreds of subglacial lakes, one the size of Lake Ontario, sealed from the sky for millions of years. When scientists finally drilled into one of them, they pulled up life. Living, breathing, ancient microbial life, surviving in darkness under a kilometer of ice. The ice is thawing. And for the first time, humanity is getting a clear look at what it was hiding. The question is no longer whether something ancient is down there. It's what that something is, and what else is still waiting to be exposed. Antarctica is the 5th largest continent, and roughly 98% of it is buried under ice. The East Antarctic ice sheet alone contains enough ice to raise global sea level by more than 25 feet if it were to melt. The continent was not always frozen. In a landmark study from 2020, a team of researchers analyzed a sediment core recovered from the seafloor near West Antarctica's Pine Island Glacier and found fossil pollen, spores, and preserved root systems. The unmistakable signature of a temperate rainforest that stood near the South Pole roughly 90 million years ago, when average annual temperatures there reached about 13 degrees Celsius. The ice sheet itself is geologically young by comparison. The Gambert-Sev Mountains, a range buried under up to 4 kilometers of ice at the heart of East Antarctica, were discovered only in 1958 by the 3rd Soviet Antarctic expedition. Radar and seismic work has since shown they were pushed up around 500 million years ago when the supercontinent Gondwana was assembling. Proof that a full modern mountain range can sit entombed beneath the ice for 500 million years. There is water down there in quantities scientists never imagined before the 1970s. More than 400 subglacial lakes have been cataloged beneath the Antarctic ice sheet. The largest, Lake Vostok, lies under nearly 4 kilometers of ice at the Russian Vostok station and is kept liquid by geothermal heat from below. In 2008, analysis of ice that had refrozen onto the lake's surface recovered microbial DNA, indicating a diverse microbial population in the lake itself. In December of 2018, an international team drilled cleanly through roughly 1,100 meters of ice into Lake Mercer, beneath the West Antarctic ice sheet. Only the second time in history a subglacial lake had been accessed with contamination-controlled equipment. They recovered water, microbes, and, in a world first, a layered sediment core from the lake bed. Ice loss is real, and it is measured. NASA's GRACE and GRACE-FO satellite missions show Antarctica lost ice at roughly 135 gigatons per year between 2002 and 2025. But some things remain genuinely debated. How fast the West Antarctic ice sheet will collapse, and whether it has passed a point of no return is still the subject of active scientific argument, with models diverging on time frames. There is also genuine debate over whether the East Antarctic ice sheet is stable. Some satellite analyses found mass gains in East Antarctica in recent years, even as West Antarctica loses ice. And whether subglacial ecosystems like Lake Vostok harbor complex life beyond microbes is a live question, because no one has yet sampled the lake's liquid water itself. And then there are the theories that belong to speculation, not science. Online claims that ancient maps, the 1513 Piri-Reis map, or Philippe Boit's 18th century chart, show an ice-free Antarctica map before its official discovery in 1820, have circulated for decades. Cartographers and historians who have studied the Piri-Reis map closely note that the southern landmass on it is best explained by the mapping conventions and errors of its era, not by a lost civilization survey. Similarly, the famous Antarctic pyramid photographed in the Ellsworth Mountains is, by the consensus of geologists, a natural nunatak, an ordinary mountain peak sculpted by erosion into a pyramidal shape. Neither claim is supported by archaeological evidence. Here is the anomaly that should not exist, and it is not a myth. It is peer-reviewed. In October of 2023, a team led by geographer Stuart Jameson of Durham University published a study in Nature Communications describing a vast relic landscape buried beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet, a region of flat-topped hills, ancient river valleys, and ridges, covering 32,000 square kilometers, roughly the area of Maryland, frozen beneath the ice in a basin that alone holds enough ice to raise sea levels by more than 25 feet. The landscape is at least 14 million years old, likely much older, dating to before the continent's Great Glaciation. And there is the problem. The ice sheet above it is not static. It flows. Over millions of years, the sheer weight and motion of a kilometer-plus of ice should have planed these ancient hills flat, the way a glacier carves and scours the rock beneath it. The river-carved terrain survived anyway, preserved like a fossil of a lost world. It's a little bit of an odd phenomenon, said co-author Duncan Young, a research scientist at the University of Texas Institute for Geophysics, whose team flew ice-penetrating radar over the region in a modified World War II-era DC-3. We're now working to answer why it was preserved, he said. That is the first layer of the mystery. The second is that the same radar-illuminated underworld contains features of a size that strains the imagination. A subglacial trench beneath West Antarctica up to 3 kilometers deep and more than 300 kilometers long. Deeper than the Grand Canyon, the third layer is the water. Lakes sealed from daylight for millions of years, fed by plumbing unknown. And then there is Thwaites Glacier, the so-called Doomsday Glacier, 120 kilometers wide. In 2024, a study led by Eric Rignot's team at the University of California, Irvine, found pressurized seawater intruding kilometers beneath the glacier's grounded ice at tidal frequencies, driving vigorous melting from below. Together, the picture is disorienting. A hidden continent that is simultaneously impossibly old and impossibly well-preserved, and actively being pried open. The ice is not merely melting from above. It is being consumed from below by water that has been waiting in the dark for an eternity. The breakthrough is not a single discovery. It is a generation of technology finally arriving at the same time as the thaw. Ice-penetrating radar, known as radio echo sounding, has been flying over Antarctica since the 1950s. But only in recent decades has it achieved the resolution to image not just the base of the ice, but the shape of the bedrock beneath it. The surveys flown from that converted DC-3 across hundreds of flights since 2008 helped reveal the Maryland-sized ancient landscape. Data now released for the wider scientific community. A dataset one researcher called a gift that keeps on giving. Then there is gravity itself. NASA's GRACE and GRACE-FO satellites have measured the subtle shifting of Earth's gravity field as the ice sheet loses and gains mass, giving scientists a continent-wide, month-by-month account of melt. The measurements behind that annual loss figure. And in January of 2026, a team led by Helen Ockenden of the University of Grenoble-Alpes published an unprecedented map of the landscape beneath the ice in the journal Science. Built not from new flights, but by combining satellite surface data with the physics of how ice flows, inferring the hidden bedrock from the way the flowing ice bulges, slows, and wrinkles. The technique revealed tens of thousands of previously undiscovered hills and ridges, and a 400-kilometer channel carved into the Maud subglacial basin. As co-author Robert Bingham of the University of Edinburgh put it, he was just so excited to look at that and see the whole bed of Antarctica at once. And on the biological front, the Salsa expedition proved a subglacial lake can be sampled without contaminating it. Using a hot water drill that melted a borehole through more than a kilometer of ice, with equipment sterilized to surgical standards, they recovered the first layered lake sediment core ever taken from beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, an archive of the lake's history stretching back thousands of years. And what was in the water and sediment? Microorganisms, alive, metabolizing, thriving in total darkness, in a food web based not on sunlight, but on chemical energy released from the rock itself. It is worth being precise about one tool that is now entering this story: artificial intelligence. Machine learning is being applied to the Antarctic underworld, but it cannot see through the ice by itself. It can only analyze data that aircraft and satellites already collected. AI models can scan thousands of hours of radar data faster than human eyes, flagging candidate subglacial lakes, crevasses, or unusual bedrock shapes. They can help fill gaps between survey lines and classify terrain types. But AI cannot date a sediment layer. It cannot prove or disprove the existence of an ancient civilization. And it cannot infer biology from radar. It is a magnifying glass, not a crystal ball. Every AI-flagged anomaly still has to be confirmed by a human scientist and ultimately by drilling or flying again. As the ice retreats, the scientific community is openly, professionally, and sometimes uncomfortably divided. On one side are researchers like Rignot's team, whose 2024 study, detecting seawater pushing kilometers beneath Thwaites grounded ice on every tide, argues the glacier is far more vulnerable to ocean warming than models currently assume. Pressurized seawater intrusions will induce vigorous melt of grounded ice over kilometers, the authors wrote, warning the glacier could retreat far faster than projected. On the other side are cautious modelers and glaciologists who point out that Antarctica is not melting uniformly. While West Antarctica sheds ice at an accelerating rate, some satellite analyses show portions of East Antarctica gaining mass in recent years. A finding that, while consistent with the physics of increased snowfall in a warming atmosphere, has been repeatedly misrepresented in public debate. Institutions hesitate for good reason. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 dedicates the continent to peaceful scientific research, and every drill site must pass rigorous environmental review, precisely because the ecosystems being revealed are irreplaceable. The Salsa team's sterilization protocols were not bureaucracy. They were the only thing standing between Earth's last pristine subglacial lakes and contamination by surface organisms. Clean access is the mantra. The science itself depends on not touching what it studies. And then there is the narrative layer that no amount of peer review can touch. Rumors have circulated for decades, in books, on talk shows, across the internet, of military operations, buried artifacts, and structures beneath the ice that governments, it is alleged, do not want discussed. These claims must be plainly labeled what they are: allegations, unsupported by any verifiable evidence, sometimes originating from single anonymous sources. The official record, the Antarctic Treaty System, open scientific data, and decades of international transparency, shows no cover-up. But the theme endures, because a continent locked under miles of ice is the perfect canvas for every secret humanity can imagine. The stakes, regardless, are existential. The basin holding the ancient Maryland-sized landscape contains enough ice to raise global sea level by more than 25 feet. Thwaites alone could contribute over half a meter in the worst-case projections. The ancient world being exposed is not just a museum diorama. It is the ground beneath a collapsing structure. And reading it correctly may be the difference between anticipating the future and being buried by it. So what exactly is being exposed? There are at least three honest positions. The conventional explanation: the thaw is a natural, if rapidly accelerated, episode in Earth's climate history, and everything being revealed is geology and biology. The ancient landscapes are relic topography preserved by cold-based ice that froze to the bedrock instead of sliding over it. The microbes are extraordinary but explainable life forms, adapted to chemical energy in darkness. The maps and radar images are simply humanity's first good look at a continent it never knew. In this reading, the story is one of discovery and a warning about sea level rise. The alternative theory. A smaller but persistent community argues the found artifacts of the ice are not all natural. This is where the Pyre Reese map claims, the pyramid images, and suggestions of a pre-ice human presence circulate. It must be said plainly, professional archaeologists and geologists consider these claims unsupported. The map's southern coastline is best explained by the cartographic errors of 1513, and the pyramidal peak in the Ellsworth Mountains is a natural nunatak. But the alternative narrative persists online, and its persistence is itself a cultural phenomenon worth understanding. The ice has kept its floors so well hidden that imagination fills the gaps science has not yet reached. The skeptical position. The skeptic agrees with the geologists but questions the alarm and the rhetoric. Antarctica is not uniformly melting. Parts are gaining ice. Radar maps carry real uncertainties because they rely on assumptions about how ice flows. The skeptic notes that every shocking discovery headline must be weighed against the peer-reviewed record, and that claims of imminent collapse have been made before and revised. The most scientific stance may be the most uncomfortable one. Wait for the data, drill the holes, and avoid both panic and fantasy. Why does any of this matter, beyond the sea level maps and the sediment cores? Because the ice is a time capsule, and humanity is watching it open. When scientists pulled that first layered sediment core from Lake Mercer, they were not just collecting mud. They were reading chapters of a history no human had ever seen. The record of how a lake beneath half a mile of ice breathed, froze, filled, and drained over thousands of years of Antarctic climate. When researchers found rainforest roots 90 million years old near the South Pole, they folded into a single core the fact that this land was once warm, green, and alive. And when the radar shows a Maryland-sized valley system that survived 14 million years of crushing, grinding ice, it forces a quieter, stranger realization. Ice preserves. The same process that is now destroying ice sheets once protected this landscape, and may still be protecting others, waiting beneath the glaciers for the moment the shield thins. There is also a mirror in this. Blood Falls, the crimson outflow in Taylor Valley, is colored by iron-rich brine trapped beneath the glacier for roughly 1.5 million years. And research now shows the brine hosts microbes related to ancient marine life. A lost ocean, sealed, and still alive. If life can persist in a dark, salty pocket beneath Antarctica for 1.5 million years, then the question of life elsewhere in the solar system, in the subsurface oceans of Europa, in the ice of Enceladus, stops being a thought experiment. Antarctica is the rehearsal. It is the closest thing on Earth to another world. What changes is the definition of the possible. A continent can hide an entire topography. Water can exist where sunlight has never reached. Life can run on nothing but rock and time. The ice is thinning, and with every passing year, the instruments see deeper, the maps grow sharper, and the meltwater runs a little further inland. Somewhere beneath the East Antarctic Plateau, there may be another Maryland-sized valley system, untouched for tens of millions of years, that no radar has yet sung back. Somewhere beneath the West Antarctic ice stream, there may be a lake that has never felt the touch of sunlight and has never needed it. The Treaty of 1959 protected this continent for science. The thaw may not wait for science to catch up. In 1958, Soviet surveyors recorded gravity, readings that told them a mountain range was hiding beneath 4 kilometers of ice. A discovery so improbable they nearly did not believe their own instruments. 2/3 of a century later, the ice is still refusing to give up all of its secrets. The white continent is melting, and underneath it, the oldest archive on Earth is opening, page by frozen page. Every page so far says the same thing. This world has been warm. This world has been green. This world has held life in the deepest dark. The only question left is whether the story the ice is finally telling us is a history or a prophecy.